Hello friends, this is Growl. The Shadowlands release date has officially been announced, October 27th. I actually can't believe it. It's coming a lot sooner than expected. That means we're going to see pre-patch in about a month, and then we'll be playing Shadowlands in 2. I'll be sure to release a video in the coming weeks about pre-patch prep, so remember to subscribe to the channel for more beta news and Shadowlands guides. There's also been a really large beta update recently, and with it coming a huge number of tuning changes as well as all 3 of the new affixes live. The tuning changes are definitely going in the right direction, however the new affixes leave a bit to be desired. We'll get into those later. First, let's get into some of the general changes. Health potions have been nerfed considerably for dungeon use, and now have a 5-minute cooldown but can be used multiple times per encounter, similar to the other potion changes. Health stones and file, the Kyrian ability, can still only be used once per encounter. I think this is a pretty good change. Health potions always seemed a bit too strong for me in Mythic Plus. You can pop one like every pull, and it definitely diminishes the value of having a Warlock or now the Steward's File. I would also like to see it so Warlock's health stones disappear from your inventory if you enter a dungeon or maybe pull a raid boss without a Warlock in your party. The whole meta of having to get Hellstones before key runs is really annoying. Next is a few small Covenant ability tuning changes. Adaptive Swarm for Druid got buffed, increasing its damage a slight amount. I think this change is mainly aimed at Moonkin. I've heard from Tettles the other day that this ability is something like a 10 to 15% damage loss if taken over the other Covenants. For Resto Druid, I still think Night Fae is far and away the best option. They've also slightly changed both Ashen Hollow and the Blessing of Autumn for Paladins. Ashen Hollow's damage is reduced a bit, but it now buffs your Hammer of Wrath damage by 100%. This helps give it a bit more single target damage. It's actually one that I haven't had the opportunity to test yet, so let me know if you guys think this will make it any more viable. Blessing of Autumn, one of the 4 blessings from the Night Fae ability, was reduced by a significant amount. This was one of the strongest parts of the ability, and I think along with the cooldown reduction, we'll start to see more paladins choosing to play Kyrian instead for Divine Toll. Priest got a few changes for both Disc and Holy. Apotheosis now resets the cooldowns of Holy Words when activated. This is a talent that can be run in dungeons, and because it's on the global, it feels pretty bad to waste one using it, especially considering if your party is in need of big healing. This makes it feel a bit better to press, like it's actually doing something, and also gives it a slight buff. Discipline will see Lenience return to the level 50 row, which will definitely make their dungeon healing a bit stronger, since all of the previous choices on that row seemed only really useful in raid. Luminous Barrier is finally gone, and replaced with Spirit Shell. For 12 seconds, your Penance, Radiance, and Atonement create shields instead of healing. This gives you the option to ramp early and get a big absorb shield on your team before the damage hits, and could be especially useful in situations that require both high healing and movement. Here's the big problem though, it replaces Rapture. Rapture is a really strong cooldown, especially in dungeon content, and can help save you in a pinch when someone is taking very high single target damage, and you need those consistent, beefy power word shields. I can see this being a situational pick for certain bosses, or maybe if keys get really high. However, I think Lenience will still be the choice on this row. Rapture also got a slight buff, instantly casting a power word shield when activated. As I just mentioned, Rapture is great for on-demand single target healing, and having that initial power word shield actually makes it even stronger for that. Monk definitely got the biggest batch of changes, and I think they did a great job with them. Invoke Yu'lon and Chi-Ji were a bit buggy and not really acting as expected, so now we finally get a glimpse into what Blizzard was planning for these. Yu'lon now costs mana, but periodically casts Soothing Breath, which heals all 5 party members, while also being able to proc Gusts of Mist. Gus, the Mistweaver Mastery, has definitely been one of the least interesting healer mastery mechanics, so I'm happy to see it see a little love. On top of that, Chi-Ji has almost been completely reworked again. The mana cost is reduced, down to what Yu'lon's is now, and now also melees, even though the damage is pretty weak. While Chi-Ji is active, your attacks heal your allies with Gusts of Mist. This procs off of every hit, so Spinning Crane Kick still scales with pull size, up to its target cap of 6 that is. While Chi-Ji is running, every 3 damage instances give you an instant cast Enveloping Mist proc. They are definitely trying to get back to that fist weaving playstyle, going in and doing damage and then having healing that scales with mastery. This enveloping mist change is awesome as well, because it fixes the problem of when you're trying to do damage but then one party member needs a lot of healing, and you're kind of torn between stopping your damage to give them more healing or just continuing and hoping they don't die as they passively get healed. Now you can just slap that instant enveloping mist proc and go right back to DPS, and the increased healing will top them up quicker. Yu'lon and its talent replacement Chi-Ji also are empowered when you use enveloping mist when they're active. They cast enveloping breath on your whole party when you use it, which acts as a mini enveloping mist, further increasing healing. I'm really excited to test out Mistweaver and some beta keys in the next week or two, so expect a full gameplay video at some point. Lastly, the new Mythic Plus affixes have been added to the Keystone Bender in beta. Inspiring, Spiteful, and Storming are all now available to play and test. I was excited to see new affixes, however, these need a bit of work right now. Inspiring puts an aura around random enemies of the dungeon. This aura gives its allies immunity to crowd control effects. This is the worst thing they could have added. Immunity to crowd control is so unfun and creates a huge imbalance. Packs with deadly caster mobs become nearly impossible and slow down the dungeon a ton with force CC and become a nightmare in pugs. Packs without deadly caster mobs are completely unaffected by this mechanic. In one of our Sanguine Depths runs, we barely even noticed the affix was active. I think this one needs a rework, ASAP. It's pretty disappointing to see such an uninteresting affix get put into the weekly rotation. The mobs themselves are CCable, so the option to sheep or imprison them and then pull away slowly is always there. The mobs glow with a yellow aura sort of thing. They're pretty easy to identify when looking at a pack. Spiteful summons shades from dead corpses. The shades have a moderate but not super high amount of health and fixate random players. While alive, the shade slowly drains the health of the player, and if the shade reaches you, it melees. This thing hurts, and I mean it. When I was playing my priest, this thing would hit me for almost my entire health bar in one swing, and if I ever got caught by it, I was dead almost immediately. I like where they were going with this, but it's definitely a bit overtuned. It definitely has some fun aspects, given that there are extra targets, there's more stuff to cleave and multi-dot and run away, you can pad the meters and acquire the overall, but I still think the affix needs a bit of work, maybe a better animation for when it spawns, and a little bit of tuning on the melee damage. Maybe it starts smaller but then slowly ramps up as the shade stays alive. Storming creates tornadoes near mobs, and these tornadoes damage you and knock you back. Think of this as the melee version of Volcanic. I think this was their best design affix of the three, although it can be a bit overwhelming at times. The tornadoes move fairly quickly in a circular kind of motion, reaching about 20 yards away from the spawn point before disappearing. This affix can be really tough, especially with all the new silly ground effects in the game right now, like the giant blue D&D from Night Fae Death Knights. I like both Spiteful and Storming because there's a decent amount of counterplay to them, and if done right, they don't cost you too much time in the dungeon. It definitely seems like there's a trend trying to make affixes that are worse for melee DPS right now. The Mythic Plus metagame in Battle for Azeroth was consistently dominated by 2 or even 3 melee DPS per group. I'm thinking that with these affix changes, along with the AoE caps, we'll start to see the return of ranged DPS and keys. What do you think is the best of the 3 affixes, and do you think any of these will see any big reworks, or are we going into live with one-shotting spirit ghosts coming from every mob? Let me know in the comments below. That goes over all of the things I wanted to talk about with this update. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe to my channel for more. And don't forget, I'm regularly streaming on twitch.tv/yummytv if you want to see me test any of these changes live. Happy keying!